Hey y'all, it is April the 25th, 2020, 2024. And if you came here for the facts, you wanted straight facts right now, you came to the wrong place. And I'm sorry about that. I was bullshitting, yeah, on the title. I don't know. I thought, of course, you might start clickbaiting folks and ultimately culture jamming. That's what I think. So on the X, formerly known as Twitter, I don't never call it Twitter, but on the X, just going on and culture jamming. That was the idea, right? Had the Harvey Weinstein smushed it together. See, Harvey Weinstein, what he'll get is his genitalia, from what I heard, and smush it together. Some happens like that. It's a couple of different things. He smushes it. That's just what I heard. I don't know. I heard this in court, but jam that together with the Coveed and say, "Oh, didn't Harvey Weinstein?" Can't you make like wild allegations if you want to, if they're completely absurd? And I think that's what we should do in culture jamming. I'm not telling us what we should do, but I think we'll see a lot more of it. Right? To say that Harvey Weinstein is responsible for getting up in a laboratory and smushing his genitalia together and somehow introducing a bat to the mix and then contagiously infecting all of us systemically, starting in China. Um, I don't think that's what happened. Of course, it's kind of absurd. I don't think anybody thinks that's what happened. And it's so absurd. I'm thinking it's so absurd that I cannot get sued for it. That's what I'm thinking. And we're going to find out. We're going to find out about that. But in fact, actually, funnily enough, two things that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight before we get up out of here. All right, have a little brief broadcast. Maybe have a longer, more festive one tomorrow, even one where we could be more thoughtful and perhaps thought provoking. All right, but for example, Harvey Weinstein, he's in the news. And I had heard about it from two or three different people because I'd be hearing things. And I'm sure a lot of people talked about it. Coincidentally, the people who I had heard about it from had more or less agreed on it, and to which I kind of agree as well. And it seems kind of obvious, but it's not going to be obvious to the great majority of people out there. They're going to be very blind to the fact of what took place. I'm having to take their word for it because did I dive into this particular case and its details? Hell no. So one time I did when when they were finding out about the genitalia all up in court. Uh, you know, uh, I heard what most people had probably heard. I'm not very well educated on it, but from what I heard, and I would agree, it's a very serious problem, and I think everybody would agree that Harvey Weinstein looks like what he looks like, and he looks like he would act the way that he probably does act. And this Harvey Weinstein, amongst countless others, roam around places like Hollywood, and they get involved with like movies and stuff and big money. I always hear about like the movies that Harvey Weinstein had been involved with and that they were really good. I actually went ahead and Googled it right before the broadcast because I wasn't sure. And dang, yeah, I gotta say, there's some pretty good titles that I'm sure a lot of people would recognize. I'm not gonna go into all of them and stuff, because people have different preferences. right? But a lot of them, I mean, this guy was in and out of all sort of genres. I'm looking at like what 8, 16, what 32, north of 50 movies this guy was involved in. Getting that money, all right, to include, say, Gangs of New York, way back in the day, Gangs of New York, that classic. If anybody's seen the Gangs of New York, with that one fella, Daniel Day Lewis, Kill Bill, even Volume 2. I'm not sure about Volume 1, Kill Bill, but Volume 2 he was involved in. That's interesting. So, but yeah, people were saying, yeah, the problem is, and of course, when emotion comes into this, which is the female thing, when females come into this and provide emotion into any of this, it does kind of muddy up the waters because when it comes to breaking the law, or at least allegedly, but to tell us it's like, oh, you broke the law, you got to specifically break the law, and we got to, have a law on the books against what you do. And if you do it, then we're going to be able to punish you because of what we had established. But you got to specifically do something, right? We can't just say, "Oh, we don't like you," or "Oh, you're creepy," or "Oh, you got some smashed together with genitalias, and we don't like it. We don't like how you smoke your cigars and all this." Um, Gotta prove it. And the tough part about it, and from what I'm hearing, because I don't know, on an allegation that was from a long, long time ago. That's where people, their emotions take over. They're not going to hear logic or reason. But, well, I mean, unfortunately, like I've said a long time ago, like anybody with some sense has said a long time ago, especially if you have a daughter, it's like, okay, well, if there's any chance that someone had came and did something to you without your consent, and they probably left evidence on you. That's the thing. That's the nature of like doing these bad things to you. It's like, man, I imagine there might be an exception, one in a million or one in 1,000, or I don't know. But you should be able to go to the police. That is, unless the police is the one doing it to you. And then you gotta like maybe find some other police, and that might be tough. Yeah, I could see that as being tough. But otherwise, you should feel like you could go to the police. And the thing is, the evidence has to be gathered. And that's what's unfortunate because some people might not be comfortable with it, but the evidence needs to be gathered to know. And that's just the long and short of it. I make up the rules like the evidence has to be gathered. Without the evidence, then what the hell we doing around here? And so, long story short, as time goes on, and this has all been planned out and stuff like that, like say by Harvey Weinstein's lawyers, if they're any good, they've been putting in work and they've been grinding, and they want to see their client get out of prison. And I suppose he will, right? I'm not sure if he has to stay in there any longer because of the repeal or some sort of appeal that went through. A lot of people feel in all sort of different ways, but real quickly, I did want to mention, by way of mentioning that, you know, that whole Israel Palestine thing, right? Harvey Weinstein, he's a Jewish fellow, but I don't really never think about his Jewishness as being a problem. Um, and I don't have a solution for it, I tell you what. But okay, like Iran, I mean, not Iran, but Iran's getting involved now. It's like, okay, Palestine, Israel, that's a big deal. That's just skirmish been going on quite some time. I mean, well before this year, for example. And isn't it interesting? Not everywhere, but only in certain places. And it's going to get widely covered here on the internet and perhaps televised. These skirmishes, I don't know if you've been seeing these skirmishes, and basically disrespect on both sides. The whole Palestinian and the Israeli thing, and I've seen all sort of things. People holding up flags and stuff, trying to taunt each other. I've been seeing like professors and stuff screaming at kids and stuff. I mean, just weird stuff, man. Shout out to Owen Schroyer. I saw him actually on a video, and I believe it's on. You can catch it always on Band.video. But he was over at UT, just only down the road, a little way over there. UT Austin, and they were getting all hot under the collar. Plus, the temperature's heating up too, so it's not hard to do. People getting all worked up in regards to Palestine because it looks like for the majority of the malarkey, right? I mean, because I would imagine, I would hope and imagine that most colleges and stuff on this nation and around the world are like pretty peaceful, hopefully, just straight chilling. But it's a large enough minority of university to be popping off, and people going wild and stuff, man. It's kind of like quite dangerous and definitely, definitely like divided, especially amongst that issue in particular. That issue in particular, Palestine, Israel, and stuff like that. And then, of course, I guess, it's worth mentioning as well that, oh, isn't it funny and interesting? And we brought that up before. That, oh man, so now, okay, people are pointing out that it's like the protest du jour. People are pointing that out. Somebody up in the building, they're pointing that out. I've seen it on the internet where people are pointing it out, and yeah, it stands to reason that it's the protest du jour. It's the Palestine thing. It's like, all right, okay, but that's like the new thing, and it used to be BLM, and it was like Antifa and stuff like that, and simultaneous. It's like going from one to the other. Oh, now stand for Ukraine. Oh, now it's like, oh, these Palestinians. It's like, well, y'all are seemingly, it would seem to be that y'all are in a centralized way being controlled through your thoughts, because your thoughts really aren't, your thinking isn't well developed, because y'all are all between 18 and 22. All us adults, older adults, we know full well 18 through 22. You don't have it figured out. You don't have it sewed up. You don't bet. It's like, dude, it's wild and amazing. And I hear tell that in rougher times and more simpler times that human beings were more capable, and they were more like, capable of taking on the risk of adulthood way earlier. All right, way earlier. But in this day and age, it's like, man, I sit back and I'm like impressed. Oh my gosh. I hate when I do that to myself, and I do it to whoever's listening to me. It's like I could have just startled you. I could have sent you in a cardiac arrest. And I hope that's not what happened, right? But how would I know if I did? How would I call the hospital for you? You gotta like send me type in a 2 if you're in cardiac arrest. All right, just so that I know. All right. And I'm sorry about that, but I was actually gonna play a clip. I was gonna play a clip, but I'm still gonna play it. I'm letting you know, 14 minutes in, there's a clip that I want you to listen to a little bit. I don't know for how long, but maybe a minute or two. Little clip. I got a clip. And see, for anybody who would have stumbled upon this video and said, "Oh man, I wish I wanted to know. I wanted to know about Harvey Weinstein and how he messed around and got like the Coveed all contradicted and distributed throughout China or something. I want to know how he did that. He didn't really do that. I don't think he did. I don't think he did that. But he is a dang weirdo, and it's like what do you expect from Hollywood? All right, what do you expect? Some decent movies, at least. At least it's like, dude, honestly, think about that. It's like, man, ultimately, what's the least we could ask for? At least some good movies, and we got them. We got them. All right. Uh, all right. No, but see, I got a clip, and it's later. I'll show it to you, and it's regarding a man. Regarding a man, and his name is Mike McCormick. Sounds made up. I'm not saying that he isn't made up. He might be made up. Somebody's got to check his credentials, but however, the thing is, this come from Infowars. Shout out Infowars every day. You don't have to go nowhere else. They got everything sensational all the time, and furthermore, they got everything for your health needs and your benefits. And InfoWarsStore.com. In fact, I gotta hit them up. And I mean it. And it's like, dude, I've waited too long. And I'm gonna be like waiting by the mail now that I ordered it. I'm gonna about to order, like I said, the nitric boost. Some of that nitric boost. I see there's somebody up in the building. I'm gonna tell you something real personal. I'm gonna tell you personal right now, and it's like has nothing to do with anything. I took the nitric boost. I had been running short on the nitric boost, which is like I don't know if y'all been hearing about these nitrates and nitrites or whatever, and it's like to make your blood flow. I don't know if you've been hearing about blood flow. Let me tell you something. I never, ever, ever want to hear another commercial about your dick not working. I just don't want to even hear about it. I hear about it all the time. Out of all the commercials that I ever hear, half of them are about your dick not working, and I got to hear about it. I mean, they don't do the commercials to lose money. They make money. They sell the pills or the chewables or whatever. It's the biggest thing. You got to recognize that's the biggest thing in the damn world. When half of every commercial is about how people's dick don't work, it'll make you wonder. Me over here, I keep my dick to myself. Right? And I don't mean to brag, but it's just like I don't have such a problem as other people out there who might need their dick to work and it don't. Harvey, shout out Harvey Weinstein, right? I'm just saying. Um, that's a big industry. It might be the biggest damn industry, apparently. And you gotta dig deeper. It's more than your dick don't work. First of all, your body's all messed up. And then secondly, honestly, you're not really attracted to your big old wife and she doesn't really respect you, and that's how it goes. That's how come your dick don't work. I don't want to have to call you out like that, but I will. See, I know all y'all's dick don't work. Here's the thing: the nitric boost. It's not even about that. It doesn't say it's gonna make your dick work. And I'm not telling you right now that it will, but it is for blood flow, and blood flow is important. And that's ultimately what your blue chews are dealing with. It's the blood flow. I guess it specifies some blood flow to a like lower region, I suppose. But it's all about blood flow. Gotta get that nitric boost. Gotta get some iodine supplement. I got some vitamins and stuff, man, but it's like I gotta get what I gotta get. All right. And I gotta be very frugal as well. But if you're gonna spend money, you better spend it with InfoWarsStore.com. Okay, so what we were talking about is this guy Mike McCormick, who I saw on Infowars on the Alex Jones show, but it wasn't Alex Jones. I think it might have actually been Chase Geiser, who's a young man out of the young men out there on the Infowars team who kind of like spearhead the front of the camera. You got Owen Schroyer, you got Chase Geiser, and you got his name's escaping me right now, but he's Harrison. Gosh, man, his name's escaping me right now, but he's a really good guy. So Harrison Smith, that might be it. So, anyways, they had this guy named Mike McCormick on. He's some random guy. All right. It's real like if somebody was walking down the sidewalk and he said, "Hey, dude, Mike McCormick, latest on Mike McCormick," they wouldn't blink. They wouldn't look at you. They would just keep on walking. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. But it's one of these things, and it's one of the things of the multiple things only today, even every day, it's like multiple things that'll blow my mind completely out. That is, if I'm paying attention enough to things, that go on. I mean, if I'm just keeping to myself, hopefully I won't blow my mind too much in one day. But when I'm listening to all the shenanigans, yeah, I'm hearing a lot of things that are completely unbelievable. Now, Mike McCormick definitely should be vetted in a world that makes sense with justice. Mike McCormick would be a man who he'd be vetted and subpoenaed and all sort of stuff. He'd be sequestered and I don't know any sort of he'd be well taken care of, but not in this sense. I'm not sure exactly what's going on or if there's any threats on Mike's life. But here's Mike's story. And I was listening to it, and we might play a minute or two so you get to meet Mike. But I was listening to Mike, and he was covering. See, long story short, he was a White House stenographer. So a lot of people, a lot of these young folks might not know stenographers, or maybe they do. I have no idea what they know, but they write down what people say. And so people like that are hired, I suppose, for different various occasions, especially formal occasions, government type occasions. These stenographers. All right. I'm sorry, I pushed a button here on the screen and it distracted me. Anyways, Mike McCormick happened to be a stenographer in and around Joe Biden. These were in the years, I suppose, of when he was the vice president, and probably not at all when he was the president. All right, so what I did was, I lost the video, but I'm gonna look and find it here in just like in about, I don't know, like 3 minutes. All right, so sit quietly. And what I want you to do is just kind of gaze at the side of my face and wonder to yourself how it got so sculpted, chiseled, and ruggedly handsome. All right. So now, anyways, Mike McCormick, as I bring it back up, a stenographer. And I'm sorry for taking so long, and you really don't know what I'm getting at. He oh my Atlanta. See, the internet is full of all sort of ads and pop-ups. And at this very moment, I'm seeing some lady in like some some other person is putting cream on her face in order for this lady to not look so old. She's an old looking lady. It's like, okay, you got you, old lady. Putting the video and you're over here putting your finger full of cream all on her face and just putting it back and forth. And it's like, that's not what I came here for. Right? It's very distracting. So, but before I play just a little bit of it, so you get a taste of it, and I don't know that he's real, but reportedly he is real. You're hearing a voice that I'm reporting that is supposedly real. But as you can imagine, you're following around Joe Biden. If you're following around Joe Biden, even back in the day, his vice president days, I bet you're liable to hear this and that, and either you take it one way or the other, or whatever. You just do your job. I don't think people even really think about it too hard. But of course, a stenographer is liable to hear a lot of things if he happens to be around, right? And then he's going to write them down, and that's what his job was. But all right, just to kind of set the stage. Right before listening to this interview, you had Chase Geyser. Chase Geyser, he was playing a video from Alex Jones, and it's gonna like now I'm gonna throw myself into the story because it made me go back in time, and I went back and I thought about approximately 10 years ago because Chase Geyser was talking about Alex Jones 10 years ago to the day. And he had gone back in the archive and he had listened to Alex Jones, April, whatever, 24th, 25th, 2014. And the kind of stuff that he was talking about. It made me go back because I do remember that as well. And I think about 10 years. I think, wow, that's a very, very long time. Gosh, dang, that's a long time. That's a long time ago. 10 years, that's what I think. But I do remember this point in time, and by this point in time, I had been listening. At that point in time, I'd been listening to an Alex Jones for 3-4 years, maybe, give or take. And so I'm recalling back, he's going back into the archive, pulling up actual footage, but I'm recalling all this being some of the seemingly random gibberish that was being spouted out by an Alex Jones. I remember 10 years ago. It's wild to think that it's 2024 right now. And I remember 10 years ago when I was a guy who's like, kind of like off into my own world and kind of like almost in isolation, if you will, in isolation mode. But I was 10 years ago. I recall being in that kind of mode, that isolation mode, that that the struggling mode. Quite frankly, the finally getting into like physical fitness mode, real hard. I remember these times, and I remember Alex Jones talking about these things. Man, and it's funny how time starts to melt away or kind of blends into, how like the years start going by and it's 10 years, but I completely recall the time when I couldn't talk to nobody about Alex Jones. Nobody knew who Alex Jones was. And you know what's even more mind blowing than that, if you could believe it, even more mind blowing than that. Oh man, I mean, sometimes I think about it, and I get the chilly willies when I think about it. You think about so hard, how hard, so hard, pause, that they make sure that you don't know shit. They make sure that they go to great lengths. Because remember, we were talking about, okay, we're talking about 10 years ago, me and I'm listening to Alex Jones, and he's talking about Ukraine. And, you know, he wasn't the only one talking about Ukraine. There was a Ron Paul, he was talking about Ukraine. The people who had any sense was talking about Ukraine and how could, you know, perhaps be leading to a World War III type situation, because of the fact is it's not good. It's conflict. That was 10 years ago. And it blows my mind. I mean, think about this. I start, maybe it was like 2010 that I start to get awareness of Alex Jones. 2010. All right, the same man who had a show and was doing his own thing, and for quite some time, by the time that he predicted a half a year or more, predicted in detail how 9/11 would happen. All right. 9/11, what's that? 2001. This is a long periods of time. I didn't get wind of Alex Jones hardly. I didn't at all. Not once. Until about 2010. It's like I might not be that mobile and I sure don't like to go there, but Austin is not. And to think to not hear one word and to never, and it's the same guy who predicted 9/11. It's mind blowing. But I go back to that Ukraine thing. Okay, I bring it up because it's actually very fitting. You got Alex Jones and people who happen to know about what, like, large geopolitical conflicts 10 years ago, talking about the Ukraine, knowing that it could be a problem. And so, you know, it was already on the radar, right? Mike McCormick, he comes on to the Alex Jones show, and like I said, it was Chase Geyser, I believe, that's interviewing him, and I'm gonna play a little bit of it. But somewhere in this interview, amongst other things, Mike McCormick begins to describe how Joe Biden had what you might describe as an overt or like perhaps almost direct hand in causing this whole COVID outbreak or whatever. Like he might have had a whole lot to do with it. I mean, I know a lot of people throw out names like Bill Gates and Anthony Fauci, and obviously. But according to the White House stenographer, Mike McCormick, either he's made up or he's making some wild allegations about something that would be the one of the most important things on earth. But who even knows Mike McCormick's name, right? So let's see, let's play just a little bit of it right quick. Let's see if I can cut to you know, the broadcast in which you know, Mike McCormick comes on right quick and you can hear from him. Thing is, I gotta turn my speaker on again. All right, it makes a sorry about that, but it makes all that noise when it starts. All right, so let me see if we can get this started. Hold on. It's the Bluetooth connected. It says it's connected. All right, let's see if we can get this going.
How are you guys?
Thank you.
And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
All right, check this
To
out.
answer your question, I was a Mr. Independent, and I started in the White House as a press office stenographer in 2002. So I worked with Cheney there about 5 or 6 years, and then left for a couple of years and tried a job outside of the White House. Worked out well. Right back to the White House in 2010. Hired me because I was experienced. I was good at my job. I worked my way in. We were contractors. So, but in 2014, Obama federalized our office. So then we became federal employees. And that didn't work out too well. And cancel culture came around for people who liked Trump, which was me. So I worked with Obama. It was a heavy lift in our office that Joe Biden was the vice president. He was an egotist, still is, but he could talk a lot more back then, was aggressive about talking about himself and himself. Long hours, lots of work. A boss asked me to volunteer. She said, need somebody who can really handle us. We want to win the contract back. So I did. And it worked out well for me. I had young kids. I didn't want to travel every weekend, every day, which is what you do when you're covering the vice president in our office. With the vice president, I travel with Biden internationally, Russia, Ukraine, China. So that's when I learned. I knew basically where Joe Biden was pretty much day by day throughout his presidency. But I did when I got hold of the Hunter Biden laptop, and I got it through Marco Polo in 2021. Garrett Ziegler heard about me and said, you know what, you should have this laptop. You know a lot about Biden. You should have it. And he just gave it to me for free. Ever since then, I've had a real good collaboration with Garrett and the Marco Polo guys. And I don't know if you guys have ever had them on your program. They can do a deeper dive into the Hunter Biden laptop than Jack Maxey can. Put out the report on the Biden laptop. It's basically the document that the Oversight Committee is using as their sort of tablet to work their way through this investigation. So I got a hold of that and I started writing the Substack, and the stuff I found in it is extremely disturbing, and that's where we'll start talking, whatever you want to ask.
Yeah, so I know that there was a video brought to us, maybe the first couple of minutes you wanted to watch, 36 hours in Ukraine with Vice President Biden. Would it be good for us to start with a couple of minutes, this video, and then unpack it?
Just like a minute and a half.
Yeah. Okay. Let's run the first 90 seconds of this video, guys, and then we'll unpack it from there.
Hey folks, Joe Biden. I just got off a 8-9 hour flight from Washington to the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv. And I met with the mayor of Kyiv, who is a world famous boxer, but he has another fight in his hands. One is crossing the border and violating international norms. And the second is endemic corruption that oligarchs have been pursuing and engaged in for decades. And it's a hard fight. We are committed to them on both scores. That's what I'm here about. And I'm going to be talking with the president, the prime minister, and then on Tuesday sitting down to address their RADA and make it clear that American support is real, but we expect them to step up. I'm here to listen. I'm not here to talk. I'm here to listen. I want to know what you would most like to see my country doing. All these people, every one of them, gave their life for freedom. Every single one of these people here, ordinary Ukrainians. This government has an obligation.
So my question for you about this video is this the same trip that Joe Biden famously referred to on a panel later on, where he had threatened to withhold U.S. aid to Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor that was looking into Burisma? Or is that an isolated incident?
Exact same trip, correct.
Oh, I could just tell.
And I was on that trip with him. I was on the plane with him for that trip. And I
Play that clip in particular. They were talking about, I forget if it was Harris saying or Chase asking, well, did that take place? Because as you see, it was Joe Biden way before he was very popular. See, Joe Biden is a trendsetter. He's over there in Ukraine long before any of these college students ever heard about Ukraine or any of these boomers heard about Ukraine on the Facebook. Joe Biden, back when he was like really, he's cognitive or whatever. Joe Biden was cogent back then. He was over there in Ukraine and he was like talking some mess, and then they asked, "Hey, was that the exact?" And they're talking to the supposed stenographer who's following behind Joe Biden, and that's what his job is to do. And they're like, "Was that the same trip in which Joe Biden brashly bragged about how he had gotten some prosecutor sacked, and if that prosecutor wasn't sacked, and we all know going after Hunter Biden, if that prosecutor wasn't sacked, you want to get that $1 billion, Jack." And it's like, was that the same trip? Yeah, that was the same trip. 10 years ago, when we were like mildly, vaguely thinking about it in the back of our minds, when Alex Jones was telling us about this, you got Joe Biden like really, really setting stuff up for 10 years in advance. It's kind of a long term deal being orchestrated. But also, I did also want to see if I can. I'm not sure because I don't want to play it too long. All right, I just want to get the gist. That's a Mike McCormick. He may or may not be a real person, but if he was a real person, you would want to think that maybe ask him some questions. Of course not, because we know that there's an agenda, and this doesn't sound like it's congruent with any agenda we've been hearing about this Mike McCormick. All right, but then he goes on to say, and I want to see if maybe we can fast forward to that particular spot. He then goes on because now he gets into talking, and then later on he does say quite some stuff about Joe Biden, China, and conjuring up super virus or whatever and bat soup or whatever it is they did. And then of course I would have to suspect, as a lot of people would tie in, Ukraine as well, because you see that Joe Biden had these backdoor dealings in Ukraine. I mean, that was like his backyard over there in the Ukraine. So perhaps it would make sense now they're setting up bio laboratories in the Ukraine to make sure that big bad Russia doesn't do something big and bad at the same time. And it's like, wow, I'm not saying, because Mike McCormick is going to go on and insinuate that maybe Joe Biden had a large, large hand. And I can't remember exactly what he said, and hopefully we'll get to hear him say it. But had a large, large hand in all of this. And it's like, well, I'm not saying he had a large, large hand in all of it, but it does stand to reason. It's like pretty logical. It's not at all far fetched, really. So let's see if maybe we could fast forward, because it is kind of lengthy, and Lord knows they're going to talk about a lot of Joe Biden shenanigans. I can't remember if it is like maybe towards the end. There's a book. And of course, that's what they're talking about. It's called "The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden," and apparently you can find this in bookstores. I don't know what bookstores. I'd be kind of curious to find which and which not bookstores you can find this in. The case, of course, to impeach and imprison Joe Biden by Mike McCormick, former stenographer of Joe Biden. And he wrote a book. You can go and find it. Let's see if we can fast forward and see if we can find it. I don't know if we can, but we're going to give it a good shot. Because I can't remember exactly how long this interview is. The Lord knows I didn't map it out before the broadcast. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't got no time for that. By the way, just to brag on myself before we get up out of here, because we got to get up out of here real soon. Thank you for coming through, but just to brag on myself, I was doing my checklist, my daily checklist, and I got all this sort of stuff done. It was the same exact amount of stuff that I did yesterday, which is not everything. I didn't get everything done, and the goal is to get everything done on my goals list. But we're gonna talk about that goals list later. All right. But have you know, I was tackling all sort of goals, and that's why I didn't have time to prepare. And further broadcasts, there might be some
It's a
preparation.
prop to get more money. You're saying Joe Biden really was the instigator of all of this, and it was him bringing Hunter in, not the other way around.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just a money. He was just a money man. Joe
Right.
was out there doing that with Burisma.
So there's a lot of stuff going on. The guy Mike, he's describing, and everybody's going to have different theories of how and whatever was going on. But according to the stenographer, Joe Biden was the one quarterbacking and making it happen as far as the criminality, right? Setting things up, making the infrastructure for the criminality to take place. And that would have been my guess. I mean, he's the big guy, right? That would have been my guess, but you just don't know. Like, it could be debated that Hunter got so deep into the streets that he started running the streets hard, and he saw his dad was in politics. He's like, hey, I'm gonna start using that to my advantage. I'm gonna just go hard on crack and just start smoking Parmesan cheese out the damn carpet. I'm gonna go so hard, and perhaps he was the mastermind to it all. After all, Joe Biden did say that Hunter Biden was the smartest man that he ever knew, so there was that. But the stenographer says no. In fact, it was Joe Biden pre-dementia who's actually making sure like he was not at all naive or ignorant about what was going on. It wasn't going on behind his back or behind the scenes, behind his back where he doesn't know. No, he was the one doing it, and he's making sure to do it. That's what Mike McCormick was insinuating. And hopefully, Mike McCormick's very well taken care of and very secure and stuff, man. I gotta wonder about that. I gotta wonder about people, but see, that's the thing. It's in this day. I gotta say, it's like, oh man, as risky as it might be. Because a lot of people might look out there and look at Mike McCormick and say he's brave. Yeah, he is brave. It might say he's taking a risk right here. Yeah, he is taking a risk, but it's an even deeper risk by letting such rampant criminality go unchecked. Now, if we can get to, I don't know what, we're going to try this part, but if we can get to them talking about this virus, because here's the thing, the Ukraine thing and all that, that's bad. That's real bad. And now Ukraine's a big, big mess. But in fact, it might very well, I think a lot of people would agree, be even worse if, in fact, Joe Biden has a large hand in doing the COVID dealings. You know what I'm saying?
I think, prison is the appropriate response for what these people are doing. You had to answer like in one sentence, or obviously you can take as long as you want, but if you're talking to a Democrat who thinks Joe Biden is the greatest thing since sliced bread, say, why should he be in prison? What did he do to go to prison for? What would be your answer? What is the most criminal thing you've discovered through your research of Joe Biden?
Well, he's behind the Wuhan virus pandemic, behind it.
Something.
And and then he's also behind opening up the southern border to the cartels. Those are two examples of treason. He let the Chinese develop that Wuhan virus to the point where it became what it became. And Ron Klain became the chief proponent of the pandemic warnings alongside Fauci from 2017 on. Trump came in. They didn't expect Trump to win. I mean, I was in that White House. They were shocked and was delighted. I used to have to watch Trump while he's on YouTube just to get through a boring Joe Biden speech. And they realized that Hillary Clinton was just phoning it in, and she was in trouble about middle of October. all of a sudden it all changed. So I'll get real back to Metabiota. CIA jumps into the Metabiota story in 2014 in October. There's an email, a laptop, by the laptop email. Rosemont and Seneca Technology Partners guys are like, hey, we got a call from one Taro Tool. Well, Taro Tool is, QTEL is the venture capital arm of CIA, and Taro Tool was in charge of their biowarfare stuff. And she has a very dark history. So does QTEL. And what's his name? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did a great job on it in his book, The Truth About Fauci, Real Anthony Fauci. So jump in. And they're like, hey, QTEL wants to talk to Nathan Wolf. And then the next thing that happens is Biden gets dumped out of Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners because of the leak about his cocaine use. Other investors say, yeah, we can't have him. So he gets dumped out of it. Hunter and Joe are involved financially in the early rounds of it. They've got a financial stake in the early rounds. And the rest of this STP guys go on and become investors through something called Pilot Growth in Metabiota. So 2014, you've got ending a Predict 2. Trump comes in 2016, and one of the things he says is, I'm going to cut it. 2019, Predict 2 ends September. 3 months later, get hit with Ebola. With the Wuhan virus.
And the reports are indicating that the virus leaked in September too. So even though it didn't really start until 2020, it is COVID-19 because at the end of 2019, it allegedly sprung out of Wuhan, right?
Right. Fauci and Klain, basically from 2017 on, almost within a week of, before Trump even comes into office, are warning there's going to be another pandemic in 5 years. Timed it to 5 years. And that's when the funding ran out. Fauci, for the first time, was facing budget cuts from. He didn't like the other biowarfare contractors, didn't like the cuts. So going back to Trump wins in 2016, then just after he wins, Obama's President's Council on Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, PCAST, comes out with this thing in the mid-November of 2016. Don't do anything more with gain of function. It's really dangerous. Don't do it. Months later, what does Obama do? He instates gain of function. Right before Trump comes in, Trump doesn't really have much say in it. Obama does, reinstates it. And there's a meeting in the White House. This is like mid-January 2017. So there's a meeting. There, Avril Haines, Lisa Monaco, and Susan Rice are part of this. Avril Haines had been in the White House as an advisor. She came from the CIA, worked in the National Security Council. And you know who else worked in the National Security Council then? Senator Vindman and guy Ciamella. Well, these guys were back and forth to Ukraine, doing a lot of virus development in Ukraine, and that's what those guys probably would have known about. Hunter Biden would have known about that too. Archer took a trip in 2014.
So you can kind of get a gist. And man, my speaker is terrible. It's embarrassing. And I know that it's like cutting off words. It's not very intelligible. And I'm gonna have to upgrade here in a second. But let me turn it up right quick. All right. So if you could or couldn't hear about it, he started getting in towards the end. Our man Mike McCormick was talking about all this stuff going down, these things, shenanigans here in China. Oh yeah, and there's shenanigans going down in the Ukraine. Oh yeah, wouldn't Hunter know all about all these shenanigans and stuff like that? Andrew Trevino popped up in the building, with his graciousness right before we cut out. We're about to cut out because we're almost at the hour mark anyways. Can't make it more than an hour. It's not feasible. It's not cost efficient. But Andrew Trevino, he's saying I was thinking the same thing, and this was in reference to like the trip that Joe Biden went. He was talking trash, and he had the Ukraine flags in the back. You know, saying like all those boomers and stuff on Twitter. He had the Ukraine flags in the back, but this was 10 years ago. He's talking all that trash, and he's like, man, Andrew Trevino, he was saying, man, I had a feeling that it was probably the same business trip, that exact same business trip, because it's probably not. I don't know. Maybe he went to back and forth to Ukraine a lot, but it's just so happened to be that same trip, and we all know about it. Where's the evidence? It's that it's in all of our minds. We all remember it. Nobody's ever denied it. Joe Biden talking serious criminal mess about getting rid of that prosecutor, and everybody knows it. No matter how you want to try to sugarcoat it, ain't nobody gonna forget about that. And that's what I kind of want to dwell upon because, all right, see, 10 years have gone by like crazy, right? And I'm sure everybody's been on a journey. I mean, to think, man, 10 years ago, what exactly we were like, what was our mindset like? And to think about 10 years now, it's like it should be mad different. Very because it's kind of a long time and stuff. But however, we still got those memories. And I know, and then Andrew Trevino, he'd be thinking back, and we'd be thinking about back to this time in particular, and we can remember it. And we for quite some time been listening, keeping our ears out to wild things. We hear wild things in the streets. And I've been, especially like I said, listening to Alex Jones since when in 2014, all right, 10 years ago, talking about this stuff. And I guess, what's worth pointing out is that it's not impossible to really, really, with a lot of evidence being the key word, pointing out certain people in particular. I know Rand Paul is on X every day. I know it. I see it. And on every day, he'll put out a post that says, dude, this guy, Fauci, needs jail now. Jail now. Jail now for Fauci. Prison. Forever. He's an old man until he's dead. And I don't know who else is saying, but the thing is, Rand Paul is saying it. And I think that's what's the power of it. How are we going to ever carry this out if nobody's willing to say, you got to say it publicly? That's the thing about it. And yeah, you got to be brave because the majority of us is sitting back and we're thinking things, we're not saying it because of the repercussions. Cause COVID, you got to go after him on COVID. Everything else in the Ukraine and everything else, this guy is no good, says Mike McCormick. And so we think back at those times. I think back, I harken back. And in lots of ways, I'm kind of in the same, I'm living in the same world that I was back then. When you think about 10 years, I've had and lost many things throughout a 10-year span. I've gone to and lived in just I don't remember how many places in a 10-year span. A lot of stuff went down. But even back then, and like I was saying, maybe perhaps even more back then, isolated back then because nobody ever, never heard of Alex Jones. Couldn't talk to him about anybody or can't talk about him to anybody. But now it's not exactly the case. I think a lot of people know who Alex Jones is, and for good reason. But I guess to point out the criminality, to point out that there are people who we can blame and investigate. It's not impossible. But also to think about ourselves back then, and even though we were like kids, and even back then, it's like we didn't hardly know much. but we weren't really kids. But we're still pretty young. All right, and all the growth that we went through in that time. But even back then, having some idea, we didn't know exactly, but now it's culminating over the span of 10 years. But we didn't know back then exactly what was going on. We were trying to figure it out. It was all bewildering. And I do believe at this point, over the 10 years of the cultivating, and I can speak to Andrew Trevino in particular, and a lot of other people, Major Mark, and a lot of other people have been culminating in their brains. We made a separation a long time ago in which we deviated and we started like, I would like to say thinking for ourselves if that is appropriate, or like wanting more, wanting to find out more, and then thirst for we just feel like we're being lied to or something. Somebody has got to be lying, and then you dig a little bit and you say, oh my God, I think somebody's lying to me. Oh yeah, we went down that deviation, and we're not all the same, but I think we've all made such progress that it's worth it. It's like it's hard to acknowledge on a personal level. Before we get up out of here, it's kind of hard to acknowledge, right? Because you got so much knowledge up in there. This knowledge ain't helpful necessarily, because it's a spiritual battle, and I think everybody will agree. Everybody who I've talked to agrees. It's a spiritual battle, which really doesn't matter how much knowledge you have and how much intellect and stuff. So we could sit here and talk all day long. And that wouldn't really be the solution. But however, it does seem that you got people saying these things, Rand Paul, and Elon Musk, and all these people might have been taken out and cloned, right? But like hypothetically, if they weren't all taken out and cloned, Alex Jones, and the list goes on. Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the list goes freaking on and on and on and on and on and on and on. The list, Jim Brewer, like Roseanne Barr, then became a legend, and all sort of stuff, man. The list goes on and on. Shout out to John Stockton and everybody else. See, at this point, we always been regular. We're regular people. We're just like you. We're regular. Well, like, we're everyday people. We're of the people, right? But honestly, at this point, a lot of people believe in science. I would say we're almost basically qualified as prophets, and I don't want to blow our heads up. Like, we get started. Oh shoot! Well, I didn't know if that was going to be the end of the broadcast.